Suicide Zen Forgiveness, the pod that shares the stories of those affected by suicide. Lost a loved one? Attempted it yourself? Did you know that when you share a burden, the load is lightened? Come listen in with your host, Elaine Lindsay.
Suicide Zen Forgiveness, the podcast, is for education only. Some of the subject matter could be triggering for those that are newly grieving or in a poor state of mental health. Please call your local suicide hotline or mental health office if you need immediate help. Hello there. It's great to be back, and I'm excited to share a great guest with you today, someone very new in my life, and I'm so excited to share her story. This is someone who has given her service, and that's always something that's very important to me. Her name is Tracey Brown, and I'm going to give you a little info before I bring her up with me. She's a #1 best-selling author and an international award-winning motivational speaker. She's in the mindset industry. Her signature speech, The Disease of Playing Small, is featured on Amazon Prime video series Speak Up Season 4. She is a U.S. Coast Guard veteran, facilitator, and spokesperson for Polk Institute on the topic of mental fitness for entrepreneurs. Her journey into understanding how our mind is set was born from trauma, the literal flames of life threatening burns at the age of 8, and the trauma associated with years of search and rescue and marine safety in the United States Coast Guard. Tracey's mission is to help individuals and business leaders understand that we have great power in our choices, and when we apply positive mindset, excellence in our language, and joy in our endeavors, those choices will serve the highest good for all. Without further ado, hello, Tracey.
Well, hello, Elaine. How are you?
I'm good.
Great. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, I am absolutely excited to have you. Like this is going to be great. And on the heels of what I just said, it obviously did not start great for you. And for that, I feel it here. And I'm just going to not bother with any preamble or falderall. I would like you to just give it to us from wherever it is you want to start.
Well, I appreciate that, Elaine. And, I tell people my story started a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And those of us understand that statement, right? But a long time ago. But yeah, what I call my first remembered trauma, because I think we all have traumas that we don't actually remember. But my first remembered trauma was when I was 8 years old and I was in a fire at my house. It was an accident. We were doing a play for Christmas, and I was Santa Claus. So I had, this is back in 1969, mind you, so there's no fire retardant or anything like that. So we made the costume, and I had a cotton beard that we taped to my face and cotton around my wrist and a nice flannel shirt. Well, I reached over a candle to get my little bell, and it melted the tape on my wrist, and it caught my wrist on fire. And so in the process of shaking my hand, to try to put it out, it caught my beard on fire and exploded in my face. And the basically melted to my neck, and it's very, very traumatic, as you can imagine. And think of this, though. This is the one thing I like people to understand is understand that in 1969, imagine being in a house with 5 kids as a babysitter, and one of the children is now on fire. Okay, what do? You don't call 911 because there is no 911.
No.
Right? You don't, it's like, so one of the kids ran across the street to our neighbor. My babysitter. Now, mind you, I tell the story because this is what happened to me. Was I heard a voice that said, "Drop on the ground and roll around, and you'll be fine." Now, they didn't teach stop, drop, and roll in the States in 1969, and no one in the family or nobody there actually said that. I asked each one, "Who told me to do this?" No one. So I believe that there is a source greater than us, and I believe that source, I call that source God, saved my life. The babysitter picked me up, put me in the bathtub, put cold water. She did all the right things.
Yeah.
Neighbors took me to the hospital, and I was there for months. And it was not only a trauma for me, and this is something that I want people to understand. When there is a trauma, it's not just the person that is experiencing it. Every person around you has their experience of that trauma as well. And I truly believe that traumas are shapers. They're not the end all, they're not the definer, they're not everything about us, but they shape how we see things, how we feel things, how we react to things. And one of the things that I learned moving forward in my life, I was a 10-year outpatient for that, doing surgeries in my neck and my hands and my ears. And they did an amazing job with what they had. And coming out of that, what was it, 4 or 5 years later, I ended up going in the United States Coast Guard. So, and I went into search and rescue, and we did a lot of that. I was a boat swimmer, small boat swimmer, and so we did a lot of search and rescue. And unfortunately, at that time, now this was in 1983, again a long time ago, right? Our boats weren't quite as fast as they are now. So many times when we would have this adrenaline rush of going out to rescue somebody and a plan to go get them, this, how we're going to do this and this and this, many times instead of picking up a victim, we would end up picking up lifeless bodies. And so that wears on you. So many years later, so I basically wandered around dealing with life, navigating life, as I say, with undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder. And I don't like putting that D on there because that D really messed me up for a long time. But and when I finally had some ability to go through some train or some therapy, I went through the VA, the Veterans Affairs here in the United States, and they have an amazing program. So my first shout out is to any veterans that might be listening to this. Please reach out to your Veterans Affairs, whether you're in their system or not. Just go there, they'll get you in the system, and they will help. Their whole mission is to help veterans, and they have an amazing trauma support system here in the States. And one of the things that I learned is that traumas build on each other. So the traumas that you have as a child, or the traumas that you've had as a teen, or whatever traumas you've had, and then you go through other traumas, and now we look at this pandemic that we've just been through, right? Mm-hmm. So I truly believe the statistics before this pandemic was 70% of the population, world population, has been affected by trauma. 20% go into what I call a trauma loop, which would be like a post-traumatic stress disorder type thing. I truly believe now with this pandemic and what we've all gone through, this whole entire world, I truly believe we've all been affected by trauma somehow, some way, one way or another. And it's guiding us in how we're making decisions going forward. So my encouragement is, first and foremost, if people are feeling like they're not the same person they were 3 years ago, if they're reacting differently to things than they did 3 years ago, if they just feel like they've got this heaviness on them. I was speaking with another podcaster, we were talking about, she just felt like there was this overwhelming dread that was just around us all. And I said, yeah, and that is what I've termed a low-grade depression. I come from the medical world, and I do a scar tissue therapy, and we talk about low-grade infections and low-grade these things. It's kind of a low-grade depression that just sits there. You really can't define it, but it's just, you don't have your moxie, you don't have the motivation. You feel like, I just want to sit in my house and do nothing.
Yeah.
And that's very, very real. And I want to encourage people that is a real thing. So, and if you're feeling that way, the first and foremost thing that you can do, please reach out to somebody that you love and trust and tell them. When we can get this stuff out of us, it's huge. Just getting out and talking to somebody, because you'll understand that you're not the only one going through this. And that for me was huge. I just thought I was crazy with all the traumas that I had in my life. I just thought I was nuts. And well, this is what I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life. No, that is not true. So I try to encourage people in talking first and foremost to somebody that you trust. Find somebody if you feel comfortable to talk to that's a professional, because you have gifts that we need.
Absolutely. And that is the premise this podcast is built on. Sharing your story can lighten your burden.
Absolutely.
So that's exactly why I wanted to have you here. The other thing I would like you to clarify, if you can, PTSD is not limited to the military, to the police.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. My book that I wrote, the #1 bestseller, Rescue to Recovery, it really talks about that. It's, I, for years and years and years, I was in denial, if you will, that I had PTSD because I was never in combat. Now, mind you, I was in the Coast Guard, I was in the military, but I was never in combat. So I was like, how dare I think that I have this, what these guys are going through. And I'm sorry, but if you've ever been in a car accident, if you've ever been in an abusive relationship, if there's ever been, even abuse in other ways, in corporate world or whatever, it is not limited to anything. It is the only determinant is actually your disposition and how you've changed.
Yeah, and it's such an important piece, especially now after this pandemic,
Yes.
because everybody's in it.
Yes.
But you said exactly what I personally went through, because I was told, I don't know, 2015 or 2016, oh, you have PTSD.
Mhm.
And I said, don't be ridiculous. I've never been, the only one in the military is my father. So it's got nothing to do with the military.
No, it's got
It's
nothing
like,
to do with it.
oh, and I've since found lots of people felt the same way. And it's interesting to me. It was interesting that you were in the military
Mhm.
and yet you still were undiagnosed or felt the same way, which I
Yeah.
think is critically important.
Well, because, and here's the thing, it has nothing to do with combat. It has to do with what I call injuries to our soul. So I'm also a scar tissue therapist. I work on physical scar tissue, and where I really made a lot of these discoveries, if you will, in my own world, is that emotional scars are very much like physical scars. Okay, so if you get a sprained ankle, when you have an injury, they're graded. So a sprained ankle could be a grade 1, 2, 3, or 4. It doesn't matter. You still have to treat it,
Yeah.
right? So my grade 3 might be, as far as trauma to my soul, could be a grade 10 to somebody else, right? It's
Yes.
all about disposition. It's all about who you are, and it's individualized to every single person. And the other amazing thing is, just like when you have an injury to your physical body does certain things to protect itself,
Yeah.
right? Pain, inflammation, immobility. Don't move it. It's going to hurt. Send a lot of blood there, get some inflammation there. Don't let it move around. Well, our emotions do the same thing. We go into shock. We go into this pause. I call it the pause that the body and the brain go into to assess, try to figure out what's going on here. And so PTS, and I like to take the D off because that threw me off for a long time. Disorder, great. Now I'm broken,
Yeah.
right? I'm
Yeah.
completely broken and nobody can fix me. And it's like, no, that's just a thing that's in a medical book that doctors can look at and go, oh, this is the extreme to that. But post-traumatic stress, a, 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 a stress that you're dealing after a trauma, and every single human being goes through it, whether we know it or not. And I didn't know either. It's just like I thought, only some. No, everybody does it. Some people go through it faster, easier, and some people don't. Again, it goes back to the individual person. Every human being is different. And the other thing is when we were talking about traumas, and it's not just what I said, it's not just the trauma that I went through, it's the people that were around me that went through. They
Yeah.
had trauma too.
Yeah.
And so anything that we're going through, anybody around that area should really have a chat. I mean, just talk about your experience in that trauma, because we all went through it. We just experienced it from a different angle. So it's huge conversations that we need to have.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. I don't even have words at the moment for how huge that is.
It's huge. Everybody's treating the victim, which is huge. That needs to happen. The person that's been traumatized. But we also need to talk to people that have been around it. What did you experience? And how can we work through that? And I'm a big proponent of these days, not before I went through some of this therapy, but a big proponent of, Brene Brown talks a lot about vulnerability.
Yeah.
And when I'm going to be doing a speech on it later on in the next month. But, one of the things is, what do you think of when you think of the word vulnerable? Some people think, oh, I'm standing up in the front of people and I'm naked, or I'm exposing something that could hurt me, or that vulnerability is the key to connection. And when we hold these pains in, when we're not allowing people to see, Brene Brown's, the definition is seeing others and allowing others to see us. That's vulnerability, and that's connection. When we're not allowing people to see these pains or these traumas or these things that are holding us back, they will continue to hold us back. And hence my speech on playing small. When the more we hold it back, the smaller and smaller and smaller we play. And our world gets super small. And then we isolate, and that's no bueno. I mean, that's not good.
Yeah. Something in that I think is critical for people to really understand. Yes, when we let them see us, we can see them. Mm-hmm. But we have to get to the place that we can see us.
Yes, absolutely. And that to me is where we start talking. Yeah. So I can, a good friend of mine, she has this great saying, we all need someone to talk to because we're all in a jar and we can't read our own label.
Yes. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful picture.
You can't read the label from the inside of the jar.
Awesome. But she is amazing in that, we need that because it helps us to get out of our jar.
Yeah.
By talking about it, we can actually see our jar. We can see inside our jar when we talk. When we don't, we get caught up in this loop in our brain. It's almost like a dream. Well, it makes perfect sense and it's absolutely crazy, but it makes perfect sense. The minute you start talking, it's like, maybe that does make so much sense. And if you talk to others, they can help move you through that.
And it's being able to break down those defenses.
Yes.
Because although people think often, you're doing it to protect yourself, in fact, you're not.
No.
You're doing it to protect the tribe from you.
Yes. And from your trauma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's shocking because, back in 1976, when I had my accident, my father was in Egypt. He was a peacekeeper. And back then, like you said, in 1969, and there were no cell phones. There was none of that. My father was contacted by ham radio. And I was already married, which meant I was no longer a dependent. And he was told by ham radio that his eldest child was dying. And as soon as they had the death certificate, they would put him on a plane.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. And it was almost 5 days before he knew that he wasn't getting on a plane.
Wow. That's absolute torture. For a parent, that's torturous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And yeah, it really was torture. I didn't get to see him for, I think, almost 7 months after that.
Yeah.
But by the time he came back, he had lost so much weight. He looked like a little skeleton.
I bet. Worrying for his baby. Yeah. And that's you went through your trauma and what he went through around it.
And my mother, my mother and my sister were in Toronto. And so they had to come here. My mother didn't drive on the highway. So that was and didn't make left turns. So that was a bit of a a tricky situation for them. But as much as I soothe everything with humor, the fact is they went through trauma as well.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just me
No.
or my husband or whatever. It
Never is.
Yeah.
Because then you've got the first responders, what they went through, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You've got the first responders, and you've got the doctors, and every single person is touched. There's so many people touched by one single trauma,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we don't think about that. It's
No.
a domino effect. And so, the more conversations, and I'm so thankful for your podcast, the more conversations that we can have, the better off we all are, because we all go, oh, and if one person gets a little light bulb moment from this conversation, amen, that's amazing, right? So we all need, and there's gonna, and I like to tell people, it's like, some people are going to listen to me, not everybody. Some people are going to listen to you, not everybody. But if everybody starts telling their stories, sooner or later, everybody will be able to hear something and go, I resonate with that. Oh, that she makes sense. He makes sense. They make sense, right? If we can all tell our stories, more people will be able to go, I'm not alone. Because we're social beings. We're meant to be in relationship. And when we have trauma, when we go through these things, we begin to shrink back and shrink back and shrink back. And that is not what we were intended for here on this planet.
Yeah.
We're intended to relate and converse and be in joy with each other.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know what you're seeing now, but in the last 10 years, I'm finding that millennials and Gen Z even more so are much more open to looking for help for everything.
Yes.
Okay. My generation, there's a multitude of reasons why we did not.
Right.
Because I'm older, and in my time, in the 50s and 60s, you could be locked up for telling people you didn't feel right in the head. You could be, and people were. Okay, it's
to this day, it's one of the reasons why first responders, military, police, fire, they don't talk, because they feel as though they will be benched.
Yes.
And their purpose is to serve.
Yeah.
And they're afraid that if I see this even in physical health, it's like, don't give me XYZ diagnosis, because they won't let me go out and work.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with emotional stuff, when in fact, when you're not addressing those things, you're more of a time bomb.
Yeah.
Look at it that way, than you are if you've been through therapy. I mean, you're a much more balanced human being if you can really get some tools.
Absolutely. And in all honesty, okay, perfection doesn't exist.
Now, excellence is great, but perfection does not.
Exactly. Yeah. And excellence comes from knowing thyself.
Yep.
And making smart choices and getting help.
Yep.
Which, I think that's one of the most important messages we have to get out, because it is still one of the main reasons that my podcast exists.
Yeah. People want to hear.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And it's really interesting, choices. For a long time, when you're in that loop, when you're in that post-traumatic loop, which I believe is probably the number one reason why people make the choices they make. That's my opinion, but that's what I believe. Whether we're making a choice or not, we're still making a choice, right? And so having tools when we can go and talk to somebody that understands how the brain and emotions and all that works, and how traumas affect us, and how just life affects us. When we talk to somebody that gives us tools, it gives us the ability to make better and better choices. And not to say that you're going to make the best choice right out the gate, but you're probably going to make a better choice. You're probably going to see, oh, I can do this instead of do that. And maybe it won't be quite so destructive for me and everyone around me. Right.
And not only that, you know then that you know what? Maybe I could talk to someone else. Maybe
Right.
I should go back and talk to someone because now you've opened that door.
Right. And I thought for the longest time, and I hope somebody hears this. I thought for the longest time that if I opened that door to that trauma, if I started looking at that, there was something in me that thought somehow, some way, it was going to kill me. And I thought I was not going to be able to be functional in society, that I would not be any good to anybody. And these were big lies that come from somewhere. And I want to encourage whomever might be thinking about it. It was the greatest decision I ever made because it really broke me free from the isolation. It broke me free from that pain, that physiological pain that you can't describe. That there's this pain that it's like nobody will get this. That's a big lie. That's not true. There are people that completely understand this and completely have the tools that will help you navigate your way through it and beyond, because you have an amazing gift to give us and we're looking for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when we're so locked in our traumas and we believe that we're the only person that ever suffered that particular thing, it does make you distance yourself even more. But something just I come to understand over many, many years, it doesn't matter for some people, okay, the trauma could be the worst trauma in their entire life, could be a stub toe.
Could be.
But to that person, that's a 10. That's horrific pain. That's all of the above.
Yeah.
And none of us, because you said it earlier, but everyone has a different perception. We can't deny them their angst over their trauma.
Absolutely.
And humans by nature are comparative. It is how we function. You can't be tall unless somebody's short.
Right.
Yeah, all of that. And that, I think that comparison has really gotten in the way of being able to help each other get past things, because you're so worried that someone's going to compare someone else's trauma to your trauma.
It stopped me for decades.
And I was going to say, it's funny because one of the first things out of my mouth when I would see a doctor or whatever was, and I know there's an awful lot of people worse off than me. It was like my shield that I brought into every confrontation or every, see, there you go. They weren't confrontations except in my head.
Right.
And we do tend to try to arm ourselves when there's no need.
Right. There's no enemy.
Yeah.
It's all in our mind, and it's powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah.
And one of my great defenses, besides humor, was really, if I didn't feel as though I could be in a crowd or be around other people, I'd be busy. I can't go, I'm busy. Well, I realized that I was just really busy trying to keep the voices in my head quiet. But I would not go to spaces because it's like, nobody needs to see this. And so that's a part of the isolating process.
Yeah.
You slowly back out of things that you're going to do. You slowly back out until you get to a point where it's like, I'm in my own little box. And there is a box. I hate to tell people, they say, oh, there's no box. There's a box, and we put ourselves in it. Yeah.
And that too is a choice.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm on a mission through the podcast and other things to end the silence, the stigma, and the shame surrounding suicide and mental health.
Bless you.
To that end, I think we need to start in elementary school explaining to children that not everything that runs around in there is true, important, or real.
Right. Yeah.
I was talking the other day to a group of friends, and we were talking about the fact that none of the skills we need, be it how to handle finances, how to handle our head, how to handle anything else, are taught in school.
No, none of it. How to write a check. Not that we really need to anymore, but it's a good skill.
But it is. And something funny, okay, I actually wrote it down earlier today because I thought, oh, I don't know why or when I'll use this, but I work with a spiritual advisor for the past 20 years.
Mhm.
And she says, school is to make good peasants.
Truly. Absolutely.
It really
Just smart
is.
enough to do a task and not smart enough to ask questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, good little workers. And we need thinkers, we need creative people, we need people out of the box, the other box that doesn't exist. Just, and that's one of the things when that I study a lot of brain stuff as far as brain waves and whatnot. And there's different brain waves that we when we're sleeping and when we're creating, and you can actually enhance those just by certain things that you do. And one of the things that I teach a lot of the businesses and when I do speeches is teaching people how to, they call it meditate, but really meditation is really just thinking about something. That's all it is.
Focus.
It's
It's
like if I want to order
focusing.
dinner, I'm meditating on what I want for dinner. That's
Yeah.
all you're doing is you're thinking about it and focusing on it. And so one of the things that I teach people is first thing in the morning before you do anything, I always start my day with gratitude because I
Same
truly
here.
believe gratitude is the gateway to joy and joy is the gateway to strength. And so I start my day with three things that I'm very thankful for. I figure out three things that I want to accomplish in the day. And then at the end of the day, I find those moments, three moments. What things affected, what were the beautiful things? What were the things that I'm joyful for or thankful for that happened in the day? And that's how I kind of chunk my day. It's staying in gratitude changes everything. It empowers you to be, not shut down. It's gratitude and joy is the highest vibration any human being can be in.
Absolutely. And the more gratitude you have, the more the universe puts it all around you, the
Yeah,
more you have to be grateful for.
yeah.
And I do say, I know some people find it irritating, annoying, what have you, to, oh yeah, just, Miss Pollyanna there, just be grateful for this, that. Well, yeah, if the only thing you have is the fact that you just took a breath
Mhm.
and you can put your feet on the floor and get out of your bed, then that's a start.
Uh, you are so correct. When I was in the depths, and I was in some very, very dark places. I was very depressed for a lot of years. And when I started learning this gratitude thing, I'm like, yeah, right, But it came to the point where for a while, all I could figure out was, okay, I'm really thankful that I have a bed to sleep in. I'm I'm thankful that I have hot water for a shower, and I'm thankful that I can actually get up. I mean, start somewhere. Start with one thing, and I took a breath. I woke up. I've got a friend of mine. He had a heart attack, and he had bypass surgery, and he came out and he goes, "Wow, I have a very different perspective on every morning. Very grateful to wake up and take a breath." So, and I'm telling you, it's something magical.
Oh, yeah.
There's a magic to it, and start somewhere. Let me encourage whomever's listening, try it. Don't poo-poo it until you try it. Give it. I tell people, give yourself 21 days. It takes
21 days.
to create a habit, right? Give yourself 21 days. If nothing changes in 21 days, but give it its due. Don't
Not
have
only that,
give
keep
it
your
its
eyes and ears open
yep, yep.
because it's all around us.
It's all around us.
And what you concentrate on grows. It really, really does.
Where the energy goes, where the attention goes, energy flows. It's just the way it is.
Absolutely.
It's just it is a natural law.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
So I want to ask you now,
Mhm.
when did it hit, and how did you find a place to start being grateful and having gratitude daily?
Gosh, I probably started doing this. I started realizing that I wasn't reacting or acting the way that most people do, to certain situations. I noticed that I was a little different. And I'm like, and that was kind of the beginning of my understanding that maybe there's something going on here. And I didn't understand that it was trauma. I didn't understand that it was post-traumatic stress. I didn't understand any of that. I just knew that something's a little different with Tracey. And so, and somebody, it was probably 20 some odd years ago, maybe 25 years ago, somebody said, well, why don't you just do a gratitude journal? What the hell is a gratitude journal, And she said, well, just start writing things down that you're thankful for. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I didn't understand the implications down the road, what that would do. But she said, because when you write it down, when you're having a hard time, you can look back and you can read it. And I'm like, and now that's brilliant. That's really, really brilliant. Because I used to write a lot of poetry and things. And it was all just, it was like almost like Eeyore wrote a lot of it. It's just like, oh no, and it's like, don't go back and read that right now. That's just going to take you back into the depths of despair. Don't, so she's like, write the gratitude, write the thankful, write the beautiful, write the joy, and then go back and visit that. And that was a big step a long time ago.
I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, it's 1997 was I guess the final push, if you will.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, hang on a minute.
Wait a second.
Yeah, wait a second. There's got to be more to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the first real large gratitude in that time was that the big huge man tried to run us down, because it forced me to see I was at the center of whatever was going on, so I had to deal with me.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, everything that we talk about is an inside job.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A great mentor of mine once said, I can do it with you, but I can't do it for you. And it's so true. It's like sooner or later we have to take it and look at it and go, okay. And sometimes there's a great video by Joe Dispenza about reprogramming your brain. It's really great. I use it in my teaching.
Love him.
It's we can either choose to change in crisis, which is when most people do.
Yeah.
We get to this crossroads and it's like, okay, my fear of going forward is less than my pain of sitting where I'm at.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so sooner or later, we make a choice in crisis. We can, though, if we so choose, to do it in joy. We can just go, you know what? And Jim Rohn, a great philosopher, he was amazing.
Oh,
And he would
yeah.
say, if you don't like where you're at, you can move.
You're not a tree.
You're not a tree, right? You're not a tree. Do something else. Now, mind you, going back to trauma, there are sometimes it's like, I can't. There's no way I can. Okay, in that time, talk to somebody. Even if it's somebody that's not professional, just somebody that you know and love and trust. Trust is the big word. Tell somebody, because that will start your journey to your greatness. I promise you.
That is so, so good. I think that is a perfect place for us to start and wrap up, because that's wonderful. Start your greatness. I absolutely love that.
Yay.
And I think I usually ask my guests to give something people can do or say or what have you in their daily lives that you find useful for you. I think you just gave it, but you might have something else.
I think really it's as simple and as complicated as gratitude. It really is. Figure out how to do it. And if you're doing it, then figure out how to apply it, because learning is only application. You can read everything on the planet. I read so many self-help books, but you know what? I was never willing to apply it.
Yeah.
And when I started applying the things that I had, even one little thing, do it. I think that's why Nike, their whole thing just resonated.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that's pretty simple, but yeah, maybe I should just do it. So start with gratitude and then act on it. Write it down. And one of the other things that I try to do, because I know one of the challenges, I should say, with post-traumatic stress is irritation. One person told me one time, try to find the fascination in your frustration.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, find the fascination in it. So my pet peeve is when people cut me off in a car. My friends know this. And I used to get so mad and frustrated. And somebody said, turn your frustration into fascination. And it's like, okay, how can I turn this? Well, it's fascinating that you just almost killed me. But it's also fascinating to understand that maybe I wonder why that person is in such a hurry. And you can try to have some empathy.
Yeah.
Rather than just a knee jerk and I just want to use one finger for it here.
Yeah.
So turn your frustrations into fascination. It's a great discipline.
Yeah. That is excellent.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
So we have our marching orders. We really do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that was not aimed. That was just in my head. Kind of homework. Our homework is to be grateful. What incredible homework. Be grateful and turn your frustration into fascination. Yeah. I really like that. Yeah. And I think all of that, including gratitude, comes back to curiosity. So
seriously, yeah.
Stay curious. Absolutely. Oh, that was well done. We did not rehearse that,
No, we did not.
I want to say thank you so much, Tracey Brown. This has been fabulous.
Thank you, Elaine. I appreciate you very much. Bless you.
Well, thank you. And to my audience, make the very best of your today, every day. And we're going to see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe on your favorite service. Suicide Zen Forgiveness was brought to you by Truel Social Media, the digital integration specialists.